Welcome to Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. In today's program, another human rights defender arrested in Bangladesh. Special focus on sexual violence in Asia. Labor rights demonstration in Indonesia. Sri Lankan mass grave evidence sent to China. Rights defender Father Josepas Dijon dies in the Philippines. Long march in Balochistan continues. And Asian parliamentarians meet to discuss torture. Stay with us for more on these issues. Welcome to Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. I'm Anjuman Ara Begum. The AHRC has received news that another prominent human rights defender has been arrested in Bangladesh. Mr. ASM Nasiruddin Ilan, director of Bangladeshi human rights organization Odhikar, was detained by the Cyber Crimes Tribunal of Dhaka on November 6. Mr. Ilan has been charged under the Information and Communication Technology Amendment Act for publishing a fact-finding report on the government crackdown of a pro-Islamist demonstration which takes place in Dhaka in May this year. The authorities of Bangladesh has been abusing judicial institutions to try to silence the activists who challenge the government's claim of zero casualty during the crackdown. In contrast to the government's claim, the Odhikar fact-finding mission documented evidence of 61 killings during the crackdown. In August, Elan's colleague Adilur Rahman Khan, secretary of Odhikar, was detained for 62 days on the same charge before he was granted bail by a High Court bench. The Asian Human Rights Commission has demanded the immediate release of Mr. Ilan. In our special focus in this program, we look at the rampant levels of sexual violence in Asia and the inability of states to curb it due to the lack of police reforms. We start in India, where the shocking incident of gang rape reported from Delhi on December 16 last year is the most talked about sexual violence case globally in recent times. This incident saw people from all walks of life converge demanding an end to sexual violence in India. Many cases have been reported from India before and after, yet the situation has not changed and women remain at high risk of sexual violence. With us in the studio to talk about the issues is AHRC's Avinash Pandey. Welcome, Mr. Pandey. How can this level of sexual violence against women in India continue unabated?
See, what happened after the December 16 gang rape case, means notoriously known as Delhi gang rape, is a public outpouring of emotions, of the anger against the culture of sexual violence that has been going on in India unabated for a while. It's not that, means that event doesn't mark an end to sexual violence. That event marks just an end to the tolerance of society in general towards the cases of sexual assault. So nothing much has changed. The society remains as patriarchal. The police system remains as insensitive and often misogynist as it always was. And the criminal justice system remains as apathetic to the women who are victims of sexual violence as they are.
What needs to be changed?
See, what needs to be changed is a very big question, and I will say that it's the system, the patriarchal system that that produces and shapes the culture of sexual violence that needs to be changed. But as it is much easier said than done, and it's a long task. It's going to take ages. What we can change right away is our criminal justice system, which responds really badly to the cases of sexual assault. Means talk to victims after victim. First, they don't have the courage to go to the courts, to go to the nearest police station, generally all male, and laden with insensitive police officers who often are accused of asking very uncomfortable questions, going to graphic details of violence. And even if, means like that is after the social stigma, that they won't get married and it would bring bad name to their family and all that. So once they fight the stigma and succeed somehow to go to the police station, then they find the police officers all male generally. If they clear even that level of ignominy and they reach the courts, what do you get? The court process, the prosecution often ends up in being more torturous and more demeaning to the mental integrity and the honor of the victim, that it becomes much worse than the act of sexual violence itself, rape included. So, and what is the conviction rate after all this? I'm sure it's less than 3%. What we can do right away and what we should do right away is tightening up the criminal justice system. that when you take these cases to the court, to the police system, to the investigative machinery and to the prosecution level, the victims feel secure. They are not harassed again and the criminals get adequate punishment for their crime. That would be a deterrent. And together with this, of course, the process of changing the attitudes must go on.
Child rape remains a major issue in Pakistan, where local cultural myths and practices persist. Statistics show that cases of child rape rose from 668 in 2002 to 2009 so far this year. The rights groups say that these statistics are just a fraction of what's going on in the country. Cases have increased in the age group of 6 to 9 years old girls, and also there have been reports of sexual abuse of young boys. AHRC says that rapes occur across Pakistan for a wide array of reasons: to avenge a rejected marriage proposal, for religious and ethnic reasons, or simply to humiliate women. There have been reports that HIV-positive man believes that they can be cured through sex with a virgin. Social stigma surrounding rape frequently leads the victim to commit suicide, often aided and abetted by her own family, or being forcibly married to her attacker to preserve her family's so-called honor. In fact, rapes are so common and typically unreported that the perpetrators in Pakistan are rarely being arrested, much less tried and convicted. A recent report by London-based Minority Rights Group International claimed that 4 years after the end of armed conflict, women in north and east of Sri Lanka are increasingly marginalized and face chronic insecurity. The report claimed there are an estimated 89,000 war widows in the former conflict areas, with around 40,000 female-headed households. There are constant claims of harassment of these women by the military. In the rest of Sri Lanka, sexual violence is also common. From January to September this year, 2,150 cases of sexual assault were reported, while many cases remain unreported. 48% of all recorded crimes in 2011 were rapes of women, while 89% of these were rapes of girls under the age of 16. It has also been revealed that 90% of women in Sri Lanka are abused when using public transport. The AHRC says that the main cause of state failure to prevent these crimes against women is the collapse of criminal justice system in Sri Lanka. In Bangladesh, sexual violence is a matter of serious concern for women of all ages. Incidents of sexual violence take place in a wide variety of places, such as at home, in the workplace, on public transport, marketplaces, educational institutions, sports centers, and not least in police stations. One of the most important failures of the state in curbing the crimes of sexual violence is the policing system of Bangladesh. The police are one of the most inefficient and corrupt agencies of the state and act on behalf of the ruling party instead of serving the common people or upholding law and order. AHRC says that the police in Bangladesh do not have the required skills and resources for investigating a crime. They often indulge into corrupt practices and try to settle the cases outside the legal system, manipulating the investigation. Other departments that contribute to the investigation process, such as the forensic medicine experts, are afraid of police who systematically use torture. Urgent and thorough police reforms are required to facilitate the process of administering justice for crimes like sexual violence or any other type of crime. A national labor protest was held in Indonesia on October 31st and November 1st. The Confederation of Indonesian Workers Union claims that over 1.5 million workers in 17 provinces across Indonesia participated in the protest, which calls for an increase in the minimum wage, the abolition of outsourcing, and the enactment of a law on domestic workers. In Bekasi in West Java, the workers' peaceful protest was violently dispersed by a member of a youth organization called Pemuda Pancasila. The violent clash resulted in the injuries of at least 17 workers. 3 of them are in critical condition as they were stabbed, dragged on the street, and slashed with an axe by the youth organization's members. An investigation conducted by human rights and legal NGOs revealed that the attack was conducted with the full knowledge of Bekasi District Police. The AHRC earlier spoke to Said Iqbal, the president of the Confederation of Indonesian Workers Union.
Jadi orang-orang sudah disiapkan, beberapa hari sebelumnya sudah mulai ada pressure, tekanan, teror dalam bentuk polisi membiarkan orang membawa parang, orang membawa kampak, orang membawa pedang, orang membawa balok kayu yang besar berkeliaran, konvoi dan di depan polisi. Itu sudah ada teror dari awal-awal sebelum dilakukan mogok nasional. Dan pada saat mogok nasional, polisi pun, Polres Kabupaten Bekasi, itu membiarkan orang membawa pedang, orang membawa kampak, orang membawa samurai, orang membawa golok, membawa balok yang besar, terjadi pembiaran. Padahal mogok nasional ini adalah sah secara konstitusi.
Last week, a magistrate ordered the samples of skeletal remains found in a mass grave in Matale in central Sri Lanka to be sent to a laboratory in China for carbon testing to determine the possible date of burial. The remains of 154 persons were discovered in the mass grave in November last year. The lawyers of the families of disappeared persons who claim that the remains may be those of their relatives objected to the remains being sent to China, as the legal system of the country is different to the common law tradition existing in Sri Lanka. The lawyers requested that, following the usual tradition, the remains should be sent to India or the United Kingdom. The magistrate overruled their objections. Initial examinations carried out by the Sri Lankan experts determined the dates of the burial from 1989 to 1990, a period which is known as the period of terror in Sri Lanka, when around 30,000 people disappeared. There is fear now that the government is attempting to sabotage the inquiries, as there is suspicion that these are the remains of the persons killed by the military from a nearby camp. And now to the Philippines. Father Jose Paz Dizon, Executive Director of the Worker Assistance Center, or the WAC, died from complications of diabetes in Quezon City on November 4. He was 65 years old. Father Dizon was one of the many Filipino activists who fought against the Marcos dictatorship in the 70s. He spent over 4 decades of his life organizing workers and fought for the protection of their rights. His organization, the WAC, is one of the many local groups in Philippines that AHRC works with. The AHRC pays tribute to his enormous contribution towards the protection of workers' rights in Philippines, especially the right to associate freely and collective bargaining. In Pakistan, the long march against disappearances and extrajudicial killings have just entered its 3rd week. Recent reports claim that state intelligence agents have been trying to stop the long march by putting pressure on the family members of the protesters. There are also reports that 3 youths were abducted to force the protesters to stop the march. The long march in Balochistan has already covered more than 400 kilometers on foot. Many women and children have blisters and injured feet. The government is not providing any medical assistance to the injured. Reports from the ground say that protesters are still in high spirits and will not end the march until their demands are met. The second meeting of the Asian Alliance Against Torture and Ill Treatment started today in Hong Kong, involving a number of Asian parliamentarians as well as human rights defenders who will spend 3 days discussing the issues of torture in Asia. We will report more on this meeting in our future roundups. That is all for this week's Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. For more details on these issues, please log on to www.humanrights.asia. Thank you for joining us and hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.